8 months away from competitive basketball. 3 games sitting on the bench, watching the game start without her. A coaching staff shuffling the lineup like they were trying to solve a puzzle with the wrong pieces. A groin injury so severe it had shut down her WNBA season. A bone bruise in her ankle that left doubters questioning if she would ever look the same. And when the 5 games were over and the votes were counted, Caitlin Clark walked away with the MVP trophy. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a statement written in numbers so clear that even the loudest critics ran out of things to say. The situation, when you actually look at it, was stacked against Caitlin Clark before she even stepped foot on the court in Puerto Rico. This was not a normal off-season break or a routine injury recovery that gets classified as week to week. 8 months is an eternity in professional sports. It is enough time for a player to lose their game shape, lose their shooting rhythm, and lose that split-second reaction speed that separates the elite from the rest. Clark had spent that time rehabbing a groin injury so severe it had effectively ended her second WNBA season after only 13 games. On top of that, she was dealing with a bone bruise in her ankle that had required careful management throughout the summer. Comebacks from absences this long are rarely smooth. The rust is supposed to be real. The adjustment period is supposed to be awkward. The questions about whether the player is really back are supposed to linger. Those were the structural advantages the doubters had going into this tournament. But the injury layoff was only the beginning of the obstacles placed in front of her. The coaching staff, led by don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Kara Lawson was using this tournament as an evaluation opportunity for the next generation of USA basketball talent. Veterans were rested, lineups were experimented with. Consistency was not the priority. For the first 3 games of the tournament, Clark was not even in the starting 5. She was coming off the bench, watching the opening minutes from the sideline, while the coaches tried different combinations. There is no stronger fuel for criticism than a coaching staff's apparent hesitation. It looked like institutional validation for the idea that maybe she was not quite ready. Maybe the comeback was not complete. The haters had ammunition. They had 8 months of absence. They had a bench role. They had a roster full of WNBA All-Stars to argue she was just a passenger along for the ride. And then the games actually started. And every single one of those arguments was retired permanently. Let us start with the assists, because that is where the foundation of this MVP lies. Clark finished the tournament, averaging 6.4 assists per game, leading not just Team USA, but the entire field of competitors across the qualifying tournament. That is not a number you generate by accident. It is not a stat you pad by circumstance. That number requires seeing the floor faster than everyone else. It requires making decisions at a pace that forces defenses to adjust before they are even set. It requires consistently putting teammates in positions where they can score without breaking their own rhythm. Paige Bueckers had her moments during the tournament. Kelsey Plum is a veteran scorer who has performed on the biggest stages, but neither of them was touching Clark in facilitation numbers. When you go through the roster of every player who suited up in Puerto Rico and compare the assist totals, one name sits at the top by a margin that makes the MVP decision straightforward. But the assists alone do not tell the full story. Clark also led Team USA in efficiency, finishing with a 14.6 efficiency rating using the FIBA metric that measures overall contribution beyond just points and assists. She was the second leading scorer on the team, averaging 11.6 points per game while taking fewer shots than many of her teammates. The New Zealand game, which was her first start of the tournament, showcased exactly what happens when she is given the keys from the opening tip. Team USA won by 55 points, the second largest margin of victory in the entire tournament. Clark controlled the tempo from the first possession, distributing the ball with the kind of confidence that usually takes weeks of game action to develop. For anyone who had been watching closely, the suggestion was that the time off had not just been about recovering from injury. It had been about resetting her body in ways that could make her even more effective going forward. The logo threes came back. The behind-the-back ball handling sequences came back. The full-court passes that create transition opportunities before the defense can set up came back. All of that in her first 5 competitive games in 8 months. If the assists and scoring were the headline, the plus-minus number is the small print that acts as a legal verdict. Plus 104 across 5 games. Let that number sit for a moment. Every time Caitlin Clark was on the floor, Team USA outperformed their opponents by 104 more points than when she was off it. That is not per game, that is cumulative across all 5 games combined. It means that in the minutes she was active, the team was playing at an entirely different level of basketball. The defense was more connected. The offense was more fluid. The pace was faster. When she sat, the numbers tell a different story. The team was still winning because the talent level across the roster was high, but the margins narrowed significantly. The coaching staff spent 3 games trying different starting fives, different configurations, trying to see if the offense could hum without her as the engine. They tried Buchers at point guard. They tried Plum running the show. They experimented with lineups that pushed Clark to the small forward position, which was a wild adjustment considering she is a true point guard, and every time they took her out, the machine sputtered. When they finally put her in the starting lineup against New Zealand, the result was immediate and undeniable. A 5-point blowout. The largest margin of victory for Team USA in the tournament, aside from one other game. The connection between Clark running the offense from the tip and Team USA performing at their maximum capability is not a theory at this point. It is documented in the box scores of 5 consecutive games. The haters who spent the tournament trying to attribute Team USA's wins to the overall talent advantage rather than to Clark's specific contributions had the plus-minus number standing directly in the way of that argument the entire time. You cannot claim a player is not making a difference when the team outperforms their opponents by over 100 points in her minutes, and the differential narrows significantly when she is not playing. The data is the data. It does not care about narratives. It does not care about bench roles or injury histories. It simply records what happened. Now let us talk about the chaos that erupted on the side while the games were being played. FIBA ran a public fan poll asking who the MVP of the qualifying section should be. It was meant to be a fun engagement tool for fans following the tournament. Clark was leading early, as expected given her massive following. But then the vote counts started moving in ways that made absolutely no sense. Thousands of votes appearing in short windows for other candidates, specifically for Paige Buchers. The numbers were not adding up. The patterns were suspicious. Accusations of automated voting, bots being deployed to flood the system, began flooding social media. The poll became its own controversy, with fans from both sides arguing about the integrity of the results. For a moment, it looked like the haters had found a way to manipulate the narrative. They could not beat her on the court. They could not argue against the assists or the efficiency or the plus-minus. So they tried to beat her in a popularity contest with bots. It was the perfect metaphor for the entire discourse surrounding her career. Every time she achieves something undeniable, the goalposts move. Every time the evidence becomes overwhelming, the opposition looks for alternative battlegrounds. But here is the thing about the official MVP award that FIBA eventually announced. It was not determined by the fan vote. It was not determined by social media engagement or which player had the most dedicated bot network. It was determined by the actual basketball that was played across 5 games in Puerto Rico. When the official announcement came down, Clark named the TISOT MVP of the qualifying tournament. There was no controversy. There were no serious counterarguments from analysts or journalists. There was no credible alternative candidate that the basketball community was pointing to as a more deserving selection. The bot-flooded fan poll became irrelevant because the tournament performance spoke clearly enough that the official selection was obvious. Paige Buchers had good moments. A'ja Wilson was not even in the tournament to compete for it. When you go through the list of every player who suited up, the MVP had a clear answer, and that answer was Caitlin Clark. The context of the comeback adds a layer to this story that pure statistics cannot fully capture. Coming back from 8 months away is a physical challenge, but it is also a mental war. The rhythm of competitive basketball, the read and react speed, the comfort with live defensive pressure, the confidence to take risks in the open court. Those things come from playing, not from training. No matter how well designed a rehabilitation program is, there is no substitute for actual game experience when it comes to getting those elements back. Clark looked physically different coming into this tournament compared to how she looked during the later stages of her last WNBA season. She came in leaner, quicker, and moving with a fluidity that was noticeable from the first game against Senegal. The rust that was supposed to be there never really materialized. The adjustment period that was supposed to last multiple games lasted maybe a quarter. The questions about whether she was fully back were answered before the first game was even over. The logo threes came back. The behind-the-back ball handling sequences that make defenders look foolish came back. The full-court passes that create transition opportunities before the opposing defense has time to set up came back. All of that in her first 5 competitive games after 8 months away against professional international opposition, while managing the lineup uncertainty of not knowing from game to game whether she was going to start or come off the bench. That is the context inside which the MVP performance happened, and it makes the award mean something beyond just the statistics that justified it. Paige Bueckers had good moments in this tournament. She and Clark looked like a genuine backcourt combination that could be special when both of them were operating at their best simultaneously. The New Zealand game showed what that partnership looks like when it is clicking. But Bueckers was not in the top 3 in assists across the tournament. She was not leading Team USA in efficiency. She was not the player whose plus-minus suggested the team was significantly better with her on the floor than off it. The MVP had a clear answer, and that answer was not Bueckers. Section 6. The implications for Berlin. 400 words. The path to the World Cup in Berlin now runs through everything this qualifying tournament demonstrated. Team USA qualified with a perfect 5-0 record, dominating the competition in Puerto Rico and securing their spot in the main event. But the qualification was never really in doubt. The real question coming out of this tournament is about how this team will be constructed moving forward. The coaching staff now has 5 games of data, 5 games of lineup combinations, 5 games of evidence about which configurations produce the kind of high-paced, fluid basketball that maximizes the talent on the roster, and which configurations produce the kind of clunky, slow-paced basketball that made the Puerto Rico game uncomfortable to watch. The MVP award is now part of that data set. It is an institutional confirmation, voted on by officials who watched every minute of every game, that the player leading the team in assists, efficiency, and plus-minus should probably be in the starting lineup from the first game of the World Cup rather than being introduced as an experiment midway through the first quarter. The haters will recalibrate. They always do. The arguments will shift. It was only qualifying. The competition was not elite. The margins of victory were so large that individual performance did not really matter. Any player could look good on a team winning by 40 points on average. Those arguments are already being assembled somewhere. That is how this cycle works. But the MVP trophy does not shift. The assist average does not shift. The plus 104 does not shift. 8 months off, 3 games on the bench, 5 games played, and 8. And the best facilitation numbers in the entire tournament. That is the permanent record of what Caitlin Clark did when she came back. Berlin, in September, is next. And based on what just happened in Puerto Rico, the people who count on Caitlin Clark not showing up are going to keep being disappointed. The best guard in women's basketball took 8 months off, came off the bench for 3 games, and still walked away with the MVP trophy. The haters are in shock because they had every structural reason to have a counter-argument, and she dismantled every single one of them within 5 games of returning to the court. The haters will recalibrate. They always do. The arguments will shift to excuses about competition level or sample size. That is how this cycle works. But the MVP trophy does not shift. The assist average does not shift. The plus 104 does not shift. 8 months off, 3 games on the bench, 5 games played, and the best facilitation numbers in the entire tournament. That is the permanent record of what Caitlin Clark did when she came back. Berlin is next. And based on what just happened in Puerto Rico, the people who keep betting against her are going to keep being disappointed. Some players return from injury hoping to be solid. Caitlin Clark returned and reminded everyone why she is the standard. Stay locked in with my channel, Simply Explained, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.